Hello everybody, my name is Danotage and welcome to another Shooter Born in Heaven video. Today we're talking about Woods. It's a map that's been out since the beginning of time, it seems. But it is a map that's been changed a couple times, but it's also been changed because of this quest. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you're frustrated with this quest being changed from 100 meters to 125 meters this wipe. Or anytime after this and you just want to get some tips. So we're going to check out a few things. We're going to check out a bunch of spots. There's about 14. I'm going to show you a 15th that used to work if you're a veteran of the game and maybe you're getting frustrated with it. It used to be a spot that was quite good actually, but with the extension from 100 meters to 125 meters, it has become a little bit saddening to see it go. It's about 105 meters, unfortunately. So we'll jump right into that. But before we go, make sure you like the video. It helps a lot. And show this to your friends if you want to help them get a little bit better at finding their spots. Not saying that I'm very good at hitting these, but I'm pretty good at finding these spots and making sure that they work. Some of them are a little obvious, but that's kind of just Woods. Woods is very much a map built for sniping, but also full of trees and lots of cover. So pick your shots carefully, and here we go. Okay. So here's the spot that I wanted to show you all. It's a spot that is right next to the USEC camp. It's in fact right across the road on the other hill. This used to be a spot that was seemingly not 100 meters. So a lot of people were always a bit surprised to find out that this worked for a shooter born in heaven. Unfortunately, now it's a little short because it's about 100 to 110 meters at most. So these shots are a little bit difficult. It's a little hard to get done. But it used to be a spot that was good for watching spawns come in from either side and get those hit. Unfortunately, it's not a great spot. You can still look down the road a little bit, but I just wouldn't use this in general. Okay, let's start over by outskirts. Let's go to spot number 1. It's the big Pride Rock area that overlooks the Scav house. For those that know, this is basically one of the first landmarks that this game has ever seen, that Escape from Tarkov has ever really had. In fact, I remember my first time playing this game, we would always find the Scav house when there was only a couple of maps. We'd always find the Scav house, we'd get looted there, and then we'd kill some Scavs and we'd move on. There's a good rock that looks over that still. The Scav house is quite about 100 meters, so it doesn't work if people go there, but people don't really go there. You're looking for the spawns that are going from left to right, or some that are late game coming from right to left and people trying to get out at outskirts. If you look across the field, just to the right of the Scav house, you'll find a lot of really valid spots. This is, however, like a lot of these spots, very popular, so make sure you're not silhouetting and try to take a little bit of cover. What I like to do is hit the sides of the mountains. Those are a little bit easier, and if you get shot at and not hit, getting one tap in the face, you can actually find some cover pretty quickly. And if you need to, you can kind of bail out. This spot's pretty good. Second spot is just a little bit farther from here, a little bit closer to the water. If you go to the Pebbles that are right before Jaeger's little hut, where you can find night vision and food and stuff like that, and usually surrounded by Scavs, which is something to note because you also don't want to get rushed by Scavs while you're trying to do this quest and give away your position. But if you hit the little Pebbles here and you kind of use them to kind of camouflage and a little bit of cover, you can actually see a few different spots. So if you look across, you can see across the road. That's a valid shot. If you turn around to do a 180, you can actually look across the entire lake. This is a spot that's going to be used quite often. In fact, you can look at a spot that I may point out later that is pretty decent, but also a very popular spot. And unfortunately, if you get pinned over there, in fact, you can see it from this spot here, it's a little difficult to get away from. You basically have to get your kills, and that's the only way you're going to protect yourself. So use these pebbles to your advantage. Use them as cover, use them as little differences in height, and try to hit as much as you can. Third spot is the rocks that overlook the checkpoint. I'm talking about the checkpoint that, if you go all the way down the road from outskirts, the checkpoint where 2 or 3 Scavs tend to hang out, but it's also a big convergence spot for a lot of different spawns. There's a couple of things you can do on this rock. So you can shoot either side of the checkpoint where players tend to run down basically like lanes. Or you can take a spin and look at the area that either comes from or goes to the USEC camp. So if you look at the USEC camp, which you can't really see from here, but you can see in that direction, people will come from that hill. People will come from your direct left as well. And if you keep yourself hidden well enough and you try to, you know, use your stealth skills as best as possible, if you're lucky, people won't look up at you, especially if they didn't see you on the approach. So if they didn't see you on the approach, they tend not to look up there. And if they do, hopefully you'll be able to take a shot because you'll be watching them the whole way. But they don't look up here, and if they keep running, you have a couple of small windows where it's just about 125 to 140 meters. And if you can hit those headshots on the go, or if you can take a couple of leg shots and have them slow down, you may be able to take them out by shooting them right in the back of the head. Now, this is a very dangerous spot because once you're found, you have to get the heck out of Dodge or you're pretty much toast. So use this spot very carefully. It's also another very obvious spot. I'm going to say that a bunch of times. That's just what Woods is. There's a lot of spots that, in fact, I encourage everybody to use these spots that I'm showing and kind of create variants of them. I'm not going to show the variants that I'm talking about because I kind of want to keep them hidden, but use variants around these. In fact, for this rock here, you know, just step down. You kind of got a variant there. You're a little open from the checkpoint, but if you let people pass through, you might be okay. So use different variants and keep yourself hidden. Just try to be a little creative and it might help you quite a bit, actually. The next spot is actually back towards the lake. So just past Jaeger camp, right before you hit the logging camp, there's a big red metal roof that is where the logs get stored and stuff like that. Just behind that, there's a pretty tall, steep rock. You can't get on top of that. But if you get behind it and on the lake side, you'll be able to see a couple of very, very interesting spots. In fact, a lot of what Woods is finding other shooter-borne spots. In fact, you might want to use all these spots to look at all the other spots to be able to find your targets. So if you're sitting on this rock, you're able to see, one, the spot we talked about earlier across the lake, but two, you can see what we'll call ambush, the ambush spot, which is a nice little outpost from the land to the lake, and it's a pretty good spot for vantage. But however, it's very well known now, and like we said, we'll talk about it later. It's a good spot to be able to take somebody out. It's a very, very, very popular spot for people just to traverse because it gives people a little bit of a peek as to what they might be running into. So if you can catch people making that peek, you might get the shooter born done in possibly one raid. I've seen upwards of 5 or 6 people show up there within an average of like 10 minutes. So just keep an eye out there. This spot is probably one of my favorites. I would use this for the most part. As one of my favorite shooterborn spots. And I will say this, shooterborn is a quest that I do, but it is a quest that I tend to do in like a select few spots. These spots that I'm showing you are all options to you. These are not always ones that I will use because I don't like some of them or it doesn't fit my style. I'm showing you guys these so that you have options and be able to use them how you will. And like I said, get creative with them. The next spot we have is actually at the Dufflebag. So right next to it, you guys know where the Dufflebag is. There's a giant hill here that has a duffel bag right on top, and you can use this spot to the best that you possibly can. This is a spot where you might see Sturman up here quite a bit. He tends to run up here and take a couple pot shots, and sometimes it's easy to drag him up here if you're being attacked by him. This is a spot that's also extremely open to specifically the sniper rock, you know, where the sniper scav hangs out up on the very tall rock. That is a spot that we will also talk about later, but it is very, very open to that spot. So as long as you're periodically checking there, you should be safe because you can take a couple of different angles from here, and there's a lot of cover that you can use. If you need to, you can fully retreat back into the woods, which is great. Now, take that into consideration when using this spot because that means you can get shot from kind of everywhere. Ambush can kind of see you. Anywhere up near the spine can kind of see you. It's a very dangerous spot, but there's a lot of area you can cover with your scope and you will be able to see a lot and you'll get those 125 meter headshots. It's very much a thing that is very viable. So use this spot carefully and, you know, remember Dufflebag Rock. It's a call out that I think you hear a lot when watching people play this game. Okay, this is what we call Dickhead Rock. Everybody knows this rock. It's called Dickhead Rock not because of what it looks like, but because you usually get sniped from here with somebody with a thermal. It happens a lot. But I will say now that it's popular enough, and streamers have made this very popular to where this is not a spot I would ever use for any reason, because it is always looked at. It has one of the best vantage points, and sometimes you might find me up there when I think that it's somewhat safe in the raid and just looking around for more scavs or even looking for Sturman. But even from Sturman, it's extremely dangerous up here. So use this to your own discretion. I don't like being up here. I've killed many a PMC who were sitting up here. I think this spot is extremely dumb to use now because of how popular it is. But if you feel like you're safe, it's a good vantage point. So use this as you will. All right, next we're gonna go over to the porta-potties. You know, the porta-potties right above the sawmill, right above the little cottage areas. There's a little spot up here that looks across the sawmill, that looks at Dufflebag, looks at Dickhead Rock, looks at a lot of different areas. Most of these shots are over 125 meters, so that will help you quite a bit. This spot is another favorite of mine because there's a lot of cover here, and you can use one of these rocks to sort of keep you covered from any angle you want. One of the biggest tips I give to snipers is always have something that is at your blind side, that is covering your blind side. Whether you're sitting in front of a rock so that you're not fully silhouetting, even if it feels like you're totally open and exposed from the front, you're not silhouetting so the naked eye won't pick you up super easily. However, obviously, you can use this to your left and your right, and sometimes even your front. If you think something's going on and like behind you, you can step still exposing your back behind it, and then you can turn around so that nobody can really see it super easily and you can see everything going on. But like I said, this is also a vantage point that can actually look back up at spine. This can look across the sawmill, up at the rock. There's a lot of different areas. This is one of my favorites. Okay, before we move on to the next rock area, next spot, I will talk about this small rock next to the porta-potties and kind of close here. You can use that entire stretch of land to your advantage. In fact, this is one of the spots that if you're in a raid with me, which hopefully you won't know that, but if you're in a raid with me, you probably will find me in this stretch. There's a lot of different cover here, and it's kind of in a little bit of a U shape, so you can get so many different angles as long as you traverse against it. It's a little open, especially from spine, but use these as much as you possibly can. Use this whole area. I would call this whole area technically one spot. Okay, next is ambush, the spot I was talking about earlier. This is a spot I don't use very often. This, like I said, it's very popular for people just to come by. This is actually a spot I used for my pistol kills at the beginning of the wipe. You know, you need like a few pistol kills to, or I think it's like three pistol kills to complete that quest. I get them right here because the amount of people that walk through this and walk by here without really paying attention to anything else is ridiculous. But it's also why I don't recommend getting your shooter born here, because almost everybody's looking here and everybody's walking by here. So if you're coming up here to get your shooter born, it's very easy to get ambushed. In fact, it's probably more of an ambush spot for other people than it is for you to ambush others, because the reason it's called ambush is because it's in a elevated location where you can kind of drop down on pretty much anybody, or at least peek over the ledge and shoot anybody that's maybe on the beach or behind you at the van or next to you, what have you. But I'd say this is much easier to ambush people at that spot. This is a spot, it works. It sees across the sawmill, it sees all the way up to the rock. It sees a lot of different directions. You can look behind you and look at the first sniper spot we talked about. But it's dangerous. It's pretty much the equivalent to Dickhead Rock, but in a more forested area. So put it that way. Okay, next we're gonna go up to Spine. Spine is the giant rock formation that comes right out of Sniper Rock. You can use this entire thing to your advantage as well. This is also very popular. A lot of people will hang out up here. There's a lot of people who would take this, but this is also a spot that, one, has a little bit of cover depending on if you don't get shot right away, but it's also got a lot of downwards angles. So one, you don't have to, and I'll say this with all spots on this map because of how many different elevations there are. Elevation is not your friend, but it's also your friend. It's your friend in the way that says that you don't have to range very far. If you're shooting basically at a 45-degree angle down, you can stick your scope at 50 meters and it should fly pretty straight. Because I think how the game calculates it is distance traveled horizontally, not vertically. So the bullet drop will basically only range based on that. So for the most part, it's your friend, but also if you're used to sniping, or if you're very good at sniping at very plain, flat fields, this is going to be a little bit of a difference. So just keep that in mind. This spine is very good for a lot of different reasons. You can look straight down and still have an advantage over people, but you also have a lot of spots that are far away. This is also a very popular spot for scavs. So you'll see a lot of scavs roaming around here. Do your best to just not have them give away your position. But you can use them to your advantage, because if they don't see you, they might be an alarm system for anybody trying to sneak up on you. So keep that in mind. Okay, next, obviously we have the sniper rock. This spot is, you know, it's Mufasa talking to Simba. All the land that the light touches is yours. This is the ultimate pride rock in this game. This has everything you can imagine as far as snipes go. You have an approach that is actually kind of difficult to get to. So as long as you're periodically checking behind you, or you have somebody watching your back, you're kind of covered. That being said, it's also a very popular spot to loot and come and hang out at. So you might want somebody watching your back at all times. And if you're solo like myself, I don't really recommend sitting up here too long. Come up here, take a couple shots, get down. That's pretty much the entire raid for you, in my opinion. However, I'll talk about the next spot here, which is just across the way. I'm going to call this Sniper Rock Alternative, because it's still up on the Sniper Rock, but you have to make a jump over the ledge and then look closer towards USEC Camp and the Sunken Village. Pretty much the only spots you're going to see from here are the spots that come from USEC Camp, that come up the hill. And once you see that, some people will sit up there. In fact, I like to sit up there sometimes. I would call that a spot, but it's a very narrow field of view, and hitting a lot of these shots is a little difficult. In fact, most of the shots that you'll hit from here actually won't be 125 meters. So I don't technically count it, but it's a good spot to hang out. But it's also a good spot for, you know, a Sniper Rock Alternative to be able to shoot down on. So use that as you will. Okay, so this is a spot I thought about calling out at the beginning of the video, because it is a spot that doesn't necessarily work super well. This spot is the little pebbles that are by the tipped over tank in the little ditch that overlooks the Fort operating base. So the spot that it usually gets used is a little bit closer. It's about 110 meters, 105 meters or so. It used to work in previous versions of A Shooter Born in Heaven. Now, this is why it's still technically a spot. You can move back a little bit. You can use the rocks to the left and the right. You can use the hill a little bit, and you can get up to 125 meters, no problem, from anybody that is in the FOB or going to the FOB or around the FOB. All those areas are still very valid because you can maneuver, and there's a lot of room to maneuver. So use these spots, like I said, dynamically. Don't sit in a static spot. And as you should be doing with all sniper positions, once you make a shot, whether it's suppressed or not, the audio in this game is everybody's downfall, essentially, right? But when it works, people will know exactly where you are, even if they shouldn't. So it's best to just move. After you take a couple shots, just move. If you take one shot and there's nothing happening, move. Do something. Get out of there. So use a little bit of these spots as your advantage. Not a ton of people are over here, and if you're not catching somebody going into FOB at the beginning of the raid, you might sit here for a while, but it's still a nice spot. You just have to be a little bit more patient. Okay, finally, we have a spot that is a little bit cheekier. So up at the top of the road, next to all the tech spawns in the little village that doesn't have any scavs, there is a road that is a little bit more elevated over the main village that does have a lot of scavs. It also has the vehicle extract. This is where you want to use, right? So be patient, use it as best you can. Be careful not to sit in the open too long, because the scavs will see you, and if they have rifles or SKSs or whatever, they will start shooting at you too. That's brand new. I don't know if they'll change that by the time you watch this video, but some of these scavs are cracked and they will shoot at you. So what you want to do is, you know, take a little bit of a survey of what's going on, but periodically double tap O and check to see if the vehicle extract is being triggered. If it's being triggered, you can kind of come up to the top of the road and scope it out. It's just over 210, 220 meters roughly. So be very careful with how you shoot, but you can be up there and you're probably given a couple of free shots before they're able to either get out or totally abandon the extract, because most people will sit on the banks while the timer is going down, but they'll start going up, in my opinion, a lot earlier than they should. I try to time it almost perfectly so that the time I get to the rock, or time I get to the car, I should say, I'm gone. But some people will go there and sit there for another like 4 or 5 seconds. That gives you perfect opportunity to take this dirty shot from here to the car. If they're good, if players are good, they'll keep their head down and looking away so you can't get that headshot, and they'll still be able to get out no matter how damaged they get. But most people will kind of just like, they may ego a couple of scavs, which is why keeping scavs up here is a good idea. But if they're not egoing scavs and they're just kind of chilling there, or if they are egoing scavs, I should say, it's a pretty easy shot. And it's good to know that if it's only 1 or 2 or however, if they're trying to escape and you kill them before they escape, the car resets and you have now access to the car. However, if it's like a 2 or 3 man, you got to kill all 3 for that to happen. So anyway, this is one of the cheekier spots. It's not a spot I use very often, but it is a spot that I have used in the past, even just not for this quest, but just to kind of snake the car away from some people because I want the car. It's my car. I paid them. Well, not yet, but I will, with your money. But essentially, those are all the spots that are here, right here in Woods. A map that I will probably get ostracized for saying this is one of my favorite maps, but it is kind of one of my favorite maps. It's one of the original maps. It's one of the maps that, like half of the maps or a third of the maps that were even out when I started playing this game. So it's a map that's very, very close to my heart. So if you have any questions based on these spots, or if you have your own spots, which I'm sure there are many, because, well, if you're not talking about very specific landmark locations, you can kind of go anywhere on this map. It's pretty nice. I'm showing you the obvious positions because, well, they're easy to remember and they're easy to know ranges from. That's why we use landmarks, by the way. If we don't use landmarks, there's a good chance you'll just miss your shot because you won't know the range. But always keep a rangefinder on you or throw a rangefinder on your weapon and you're good to go. So again, my name is Danotage. Thank you all so much for watching this video. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please leave them in the comments. With that, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.